Hi.
Hey!
Hey!
Hi, George.
Hey, George.
Okay. Well, hi, guy.
Hi, Joe.
Is that better?
That's better.
Well, listen, just give Ellie a big thank you
Thank you, Ellie.
for her mentor. You're her mentor. And I see some distinguished people here, and I see a couple of extinguished people. Leave it at that. Anyway, this is a lot of fun. I love this town, and I would like to see a cemetery put here because that's where I want to be buried. But the Auburn Cemetery District in 1992, I was on a committee to get a cemetery, but they want like 10 acres of flat land, and that's hard to do in Meadow Vista. So anyway, it's kind of hard to put a microphone. I'm not doing that. Bobby Clampett is right here, and his father and mother came to Meadow Vista because his aunt used to own property in this commission. And they built, my dad built a mobile station, but Mr. Clampett owned it, and now Mr. Clampett owns it. And in fact, while I'm at it, these buildings out here, of course, we all know the post office. That was built in 1967. They sent me, I think I had the dedication. And then right beyond it was the Meadow Vista grocery store, good famous. And how many of you remember the grocery store being up here? Okay. And the one schoolhouse was built about 1929 up here where the firehouse is. And that's where I started I was in the second grade there. And it was really a great school. And my mom and dad there was no plumbing. And because they had a little girl, they worked on getting running water because we had things called outhouses.
Age before beauty.
That was not really a good deal. But Connie, because of you, we have bathrooms. Connie Allmore? Because of you, the bathrooms.
Yes.
Anyway. Hey.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll try that.
How many of you lived here over 30 years? Hey. How about 40? All right. Do we have 50? Do we have a 50? Oh, wow. All right. And why did you come to Meadow Vista? Your parents?
Yeah. My parents moved here for my dad to work on the Auburn Dam.
You did what?
My dad worked to work on the Auburn Dam.
Okay.
In '68.
All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of dams, you're all aware of the Commie Reservoir and then the dam down there. And that was built about 1929 and finished around 30. And Nevada Irrigation District are the ones that built it. And that was the Bear River. And then later on this side, the Placer County side, it was called Lake Van Giesen. On the other side, it was called Combie. And we all got along fine. But when I was a kid in the 40s, they had a dance hall down there, and they had a big floating raft. Does anybody remember hearing about that? Yeah, so you'd swim out there. Nobody worried about you drowning, I guess, because you'd swim out there. It's quite a distance. And party on that thing. And then all these crazy dances on Saturday night. In Meadow Vista, when I was a kid, there was no alcohol for sale in the public. And there were these wonderful people called Seventh-day Adventists had been here since 1947. And because of them, it was whenever somebody would go to get a liquor off-sale license, they fought it. And finally in the 50s. And I made an observation that when mom and dad would go to other people's house, everybody seemed to drink, but they kind of did it, secretly, which is all good. And then from there I went to, I was in the sheriff's office for a while, And that was a good job, except for the clientele was not real. The schools were something else, because when I went to one-room schoolhouse, it was up here, like I said, the firehouse is, there were 5 districts. There was Weimar, Clipper Gap, Meadow Vista, Christian Valley, and the other one I can't remember. But they all went together, and in '49, my dad and some 2 other guys, women, the woman, they got the district formed, and so we have our thing called Placer Hills School. And the person that named Placer Hills, still alive, her name was Marion Arnsby. She grew up in Christian Valley, she's still there. And so that's where that name came from. And that took off from there. And on the highways back then, yes, Placer Hills Road, yes, exactly right. Yeah, as I go along, if you have a question, raise your hand or something. Because I'm very structured.
Built as a base or a psychiatric? Army. Yes.
Correct. It was built, it was named after a guy, he was a general, and it was built as an army base. Yeah, exactly. That's the war stuff. And then the state took it over. I wanted to buy it. They because it was on a bid for $1, which I didn't realize was just a technical thing. Because I thought that'd be fun to own. That didn't work out. But anyway, yeah. So the county then, in their wisdom, bought it. We have a great county center.
What's your earliest memory, George?
Who asked that? Are you from the? Where are you from? You're not from the parole agent's office. My first earliest memory. That's a good question. I don't. I'll think about it. I remember a lot of things when I was a little boy here, and we lived on 75 acres. Wow. And I remember how I had to go milk the cow every morning, and I hated that because you dressed up for school, but you went to the barn, and then you milked the cow, and by the time you're through, I had to have a lot of girlfriends because it smelled like a cow. Not, like I said, it was down here at the schoolhouse. And I think there was like 28 kids, all 8 grades. We had one teacher, Mr. P.J. Conway, and I was born deformed, I guess you'd call it. I had what they call a wry neck, and my head was like this, and I could not pull up the tendons, and I couldn't straighten my head. So Mr. Conway he called me his little rosebud, because the other kids, God bless them, would throw rocks at me or treat me differently. Especially, I won't mention Dolores Warnick, because she threw rocks at me. And then this buddy of mine who grew up here, Bob Davis, he protected me. He decided to be my keeper. And we ended up being in the sheriff's office together. So I guess he had that ability when he was first grade. My buddy I grew up with, he was an excellent math guy, and I was an excellent speller. So we would exchange and help each other. I was talking to a girl that I kind of liked, Marlene Middleton. And so I went up and I closed the door on his fingers. Well, I shouldn't have done that, because he took out after me. And back then, believe it or not, all the guys I knew, we all had pocket knives, because he lived in the country. And he chased me, and he tackled me, and he pulled his knife out, like he threatening me. You know, he didn't get in a lot of trouble, because back then that's just the way it was. Would you have done something like that, Mr. Brown, in your school? If a kid pulled a knife out? No, if they pull a knife out now, they maybe 6 months to get off probation. Meadow Vista, okay, you gotta remember back in the early days, my early days, there were no towns or anything out here in the county of Placer, but there were districts, which were school districts. So Meadow Vista School District, which as far as I can tell, was conceived about 1919, and then finally accepted by the county. So for years, Meadow Vista School District was our boundary, called a political subdivision.
Who helped develop Meadow Vista?
My mom and dad, don't forget them, Merlin and Velma Lay.
Merlin and Velma Lay, I think. No, Dad and Mom moved up here because our brother had asthma, and they bought that ranch there. And I remember my dad always talked about there was no water at the schoolhouse, and he got a big campaign going to get water so his little girl, Connie, had a bathroom to use, because we all used what they call outhouses, like I said earlier. And our school district of Meadow Vista took in the old original school district, and then the fire department used it. But we had 5 areas here, like I said earlier, and they all consolidated finally and started Placer Hill School District, composed of those 5 communities. The last one to join, by the way, was Clipper Gap. They held out. The vote was, I think it went with 10 votes. That's why I always have taken voting very serious. This 10 votes got them in. Anybody here from Clipper Gap?
I have a question.
Yes.
I had always heard that as far as the development of the firehouse, fire district, that our dad really felt there should be a fire department. And one of the, main townspeople didn't think so until his barn burned down. I had always heard that. Is that right?
I vaguely
It used to be
remember, but I can't
volunteer,
remember who it was.
wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
For years it was volunteer, and the
Okay,
firemen would show
one
up.
time, Mom and Dad and Connie and my brother, we were coming back from a trip back to Kansas, and at Dutch Flat Alto, there was a big fire. This was in the 40s, and they could commandeer you. They could take our father out, and he'd have to help fire. And he talked him out of his mom wouldn't drive. Okay, that's a good question. I used to own that. What that was, a guy named Fred Berry.
What was the question?
Well, down there on Cole Road, there's a little metal shed. You turn left onto Cole Road, you cross the spillway, and right there, there's a metal, it's still there. And a guy named Fred Berry started a water company there, and he had distilled water. The boiler's still in there. And that was what that was about. And that's one of the reasons, another reason we started the water district. Water was not potable here.
Your dad was very active in the water district.
Yes, he was very active. Yeah, my father spearheaded it. He was on the Grange over here. There was a committee, and he was head of it. And he and Pop Bourne worked hard to get a water district here. A lot of heathens here. And my dad had been an orphan in an orphanage, and he always had a big heart for little kids. And his wife, my mom, was the same way. And so they decided to start Faith Lutheran Church, which they started the church in our living room. I remember that. And Connie, do you remember that? No, that's okay. The second time you've done that. Yeah, no. We're talking about the Sunday school and all that. You remember all that, but you were little. Yeah, you were very little. Yeah, because like I said, our dad was born in an orphanage in Kansas. Born in Kansas and went to an orphanage. And he always had a real soft spot for children. He was a very loving man, as was my mom. And so he won the church here, and it was a Lutheran orphanage. So in our living room, every Sunday, Mom and Dad had a artist friend. He gave them a big picture of an Indian legend, Coyote Head. And it was 6x4, this canvas painting, and it was an Indian legend where Coyote Head, the son was put in a net, and he went up there and cut it out and was carrying the son. And this picture, where you walked in the living room, it went, ooh. But every Sunday, Mom would put a sheet over that, because it was not a Christian thing. Yes.
Where was the lumber mill?
Okay. When I was a kid in the 40s, there were 5 lumber mills in Meadow Vista. And the reason, part of the reason that was that, let's say you owned 20 acres and you had a bunch of, well, 100 acres back then, and you had a whole bunch of trees, and you wanted to clear the land, you'd set up a portable sawmill. And then pretty soon the other neighbors would say, bring them, have the logs, because they used to drag them over with big horses. And so the lumber mills, one was over there, Golden Oaks. Anybody live in Golden Oaks? Okay, you go to Golden Oaks, White Clover Valley.
Right here.
Okay. There was a lumber mills on White Clover Valley Road. You know where it was?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was another one, Dennis Sawmill. He was out on, by Hankins Lane on Meadows Road. And there was always a fire of that one. Our fire department had to continually go and try to put the fire. They never put the fire out for years because it went deep, real deep, and it kept burning, and it would flare up. It was good practice for the firemen. And then the big sawmill was down here called Middleton's, which is now the trailer court. But Mr. Middleton, who was an interesting man, he had been a whaler up in by Eureka. And then he came here, and he was a hard-working guy and a tough old guy. One time he was coming by down Placer Hills Road by Dog Bar, and his truck tipped over, and all the logs, and he was lying in there, and the battery was dripping on him, and it was a, you know, back then in Meadow Vista, if you had a medical problem, you might die.
What advice do we have for the next generation?
Okay, preserve what you have, and don't stop clearing the land so much. They're stripping the land out, and put smaller roads so less people. No. No, that's, you can't stop growth, and I'm fully aware of it, and it can be disturbing. And now, as you all know, California, people are leaving California, and that's part of the reason, I think, so people are here. So don't.
Look for Meadow Vista.
What's that?
What can we do for Meadow Vista?
Do what you're doing, support local activities, get on committees. That's so important. You don't realize how much power you have, because we're under the county rules. We've got a great county, but show up get on committees to everything. Like my dad was on the design committee, the growth committee, and I was on the design review committee, and be real active, because before you know it, you're gonna lose your whatever, what you have. And then be sure to make it nice for your kids so they wanna come back here and live here. Yeah, all of you, make it just really nice. Just like the Grange. The Grange started in 1947, and the Grange was the center of the community back there.
Sir, thank you, George. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Mr. Allen, I don't know who you are.
Does everybody know about the black powder factory that was down behind Oliver's?
There was a lot of mining, and they also were building the railroad, and they needed black powder. So down at Cooper Gap, and have you ever noticed those? I call them bunkers. They're concrete buildings, and that's where they have the powder factory.
Where?
When? Oh, okay. When you leave, you know where the
Behind Oliver's.
well, yeah. Anybody know where Oliver's? Okay, when you come in from Meadow Vista, look out before you get to Oliver's, look out in the field there, and there's two
On the
concrete
right.
big thing. There was a big explosion down there, and they could hear it. Reports in the Auburn Journal, Placer Herald back then. They heard it. He's built our railroads, and they were experts on black powder. But Pepper Cap, yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, there's a nice plaque, some nice guy helped me write it. It's hanging in behind the left door at Oliver's.
Yeah,
If you-
yeah.
If you take the screen door that's always open, close it, and there's a nice
Yeah.
historical marker behind there.
That's right. And thanks to the Sons of Guns, no, what are they called?
Native
Native Sons of the Golden West.
Anyways, these guys like him, they dedicate, they go around and put these plaques. So next time you go to Oliver's, if you ever go there, on the left-hand door to the Auburn side, there's on the wall is this plaque, and read it. Plaques are so important. We have a lot of plaques, like down here at the school, there's a plaque.
Indian stories?
Yeah,
Yeah, tell us about the Indians.
Indians. Indians. There are no Indians here. What do you? No, I've always said,
Anything.
we invaded them. We took them over, we changed their culture. When I went to school, there was a lady named, her nickname was Ooti, O-O-T-I. And she would come to our classroom. Did she come to your, was she alive? Her granddaughter was April,
Yeah, I remember.
and she was carried on, well, you probably know April, carried on at the school. But in the fourth grade and Udi would come to the classroom. She taught us, she never taught me because I was not that kind of a student, how to make baskets. We didn't learn baskets. And we got pine needles and we made things out of the pine needles. And then we did pottery stuff. I mean, I was so lucky to know who she was. If you want to know more about her down at Roseville, there's a big museum about her, as is down in Sacramento. You know about the grinding stones? She would take us over here. There were big grinding stones over here. They're still there. And they would, each family, one family was documented to have a grinding stone thing for 1,000 years, according to the state of California. But that's where you would do your meal.
Corn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, corn. Yeah, and then when I was a kid, you would find what's called a pestle, and they're around. When Mom and Dad moved up here in '45, they bought this old ranch, but my dad was a practical man, unlike his son. He tore the old house down, and there's all this stuff from the 1800s that he gave to Ray Smalley. And then he had them down there in the old trading post, which Mom sometimes had to get kind of upset. She'd go buy stuff they already gave to him. County used to have a road. As you all know, the roads here were first somebody's backyard driveway, and more people bought property, and pretty soon it became a road. But over here, right next to the school, was the road, which was Meadow Lane. And again, we didn't name roads. It's where the Browns lived or something like that. So the county decided to move the road over here because we went right next to the new wing of the school, which is not new now. And I was there looking out the window of my dad's Catholic shop hardware store right there. And the county comes along and they've got a road grader. They had just got it. It's a real nice one. But they just went through the Indian grinders and boing, 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 and just knocked them out and everything. And even at that age, I felt that was not a very bright thing to do. Anybody here from Sierra Pacific? Oh, there he is. All right.
Right in the front yard.
That's right. Walk over there sometime, and right in front, as you walk into his office, there's little holes there.
Was there a campsite over by the post office?
He doesn't know.
Campsite over.
Well, okay. I was always told by Udi and that, because I interviewed her about stuff like that. And she told me that most of where the Native Americans lived was like right where there was water available. That was a key thing to them. And so that's why the grinding stones over there are there. They're all over around here. It'd be like if we left pots and pans, you know, and those are the permanent pots and pans, the way I left it. Again, the Native Americans were really treated nice like we do, like in other countries we move in and change our culture. But I have no political statement there. But down where the Bear River is now, well, the Bear River then, the Nevada Irrigation District came in and built the dam down there, and there was Indian grave sites. And I was told firsthand that they, back then they had backhoes, even back then. And they came down there and they scooped it up, if you can believe this, and took it up to the top of Sugar Pine, I mean not the top, or Sugar Pine. How many of you been to the cemetery there? Okay, you know what you're talking about. There's a cemetery there, and if you guys ever want to, you girls and guys, ever want a tour of that, I'll set up a tour, and that's where Uti is buried. You know, homes in Meadow Vista, my dad, our dad was ended up being a general contractor, and a lot of pillars, foundation, they would just get an oak stump, cut it up, and that would be your pillar instead of concrete. And it was nice for the termites because they go directly into the house. 50s, there was like one building inspector in Placer County. And what he told my dad is, once he trusted you as a contractor, that he very rarely he just signed you on. That's the way it was. Wasn't it like 1920 or something, or 1950? Okay, Placer County has a historical resource center. And you go in there and that house is on there, because I was helped part of that, and I turned in places like that. So that you go get a whole file on it. It'll tell you the background. And then you can give a talk sometime, and I'll go. Okay, good question. Remember, it was built in 2930. WPA, you know what that means, you old people?
Work Project
Okay.
Administration.
Yeah, was it? So, what was that? Oh. When did Comby and Van Giesen? Okay. Okay. The county, I'm going to stand here so I can focus. The Nevada Irrigation District built Comby Reservoir, and they called it Comby because the Combys lived on Nevada County side. Then people named Van Giesen owned this side, and in the 40s they had a resort there. Yeah, so that's the name, but it's officially called Comby Reservoir, but people of Placer County refer to it as Van Giesen. Yeah, that's the problem. Well, actually, they really didn't win it, but Placer County people wouldn't acknowledge it as Comby. They called it Van Giesen. And when I was a kid, that's when I go to Van Giesen. Oh, thank you. Van Giesen parties, resort, a lot of drinking. Alcohol. Yes, sir. That's right. That you all know that Bob had a. Okay, have any of you gone down to Van Giesen Dam? You should go down there. Can you still get there? We grew up together. And the reason we were good police officers is because we knew what crime was. He was my buddy. We did everything together. Everything. I mean, it was just great. I miss him more than anybody in my childhood. And I couldn't get him to quit smoking. And he died. Yeah. A great guy. Good officer. He knew how to handle people. But he's very smart. One night, we both ended up at Van Giesen Resort, and it was the guys fighting and all that. So I jumped out of my unit. I ran up there, And because they said the guy went up there, and I ran up there, and I'm looking around, hey, Bob, I looked down there, he's still by his unit. He was a lot smarter than I was. By the way, we never got the guy. The guy wasn't bad. He's just a criminal. Any other questions? Well, yeah, I tried to do a historical, I've done a couple of things, but they're not, I need to do more. And I talked to my cardiologist, he said, I still have time. Yeah.
We're about out of time.
What?
Yeah.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.